The motion sensor on Marcus Webb's phone buzzed at 1:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in May 2020 through the security camera. He watched 5 people, 2 adults and 3 children, climb over his 7-foot privacy fence and cannonball into his pool. Again, for 6 weeks during lockdown. While Marcus worked 12-hour shifts as an aide nurse battling the worst health crisis of his generation, his entitled neighbors had been treating his backyard like their personal resort. The police couldn't respond to non-emergencies. His HOA was shut down. But today, Marcus had finally found the perfect solution. And it had feathers. Before we see how Marcus turned his backyard into a no-fly zone for entitled neighbors, if you love stories where creative solutions meet instant karma, smash that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. This is a story in 3 parts. The violation that pushed an exhausted frontline worker past his breaking point. The confrontation where nature became the ultimate security system. And the resolution where one family learned that trespassing has consequences they never imagined. The violation built slowly at first. Marcus Webb, a 42-year-old emergency room nurse, had invested everything into his dream property, including a saltwater pool he'd spent 2 years saving for. When lockdown hit and his neighborhood went quiet, he thought he finally had peace after brutal hospital shifts. Instead, his entitled neighbor Corinne Hutchins decided that social distancing rules didn't apply to her family's entertainment. Week after week, they invaded his space, trashed his property, and laughed at his attempts to stop them. The authorities were overwhelmed. Marcus was alone. The confrontation came from an unlikely source. After researching every legal option and finding nothing fast enough, Marcus remembered his late grandfather's farm and the most territorial creatures he'd ever encountered. 3 days and 1 rural rescue later, his backyard had new residents. When the Hutchins family vaulted that fence for the final time, they met guardians far more effective than any security system. The resolution involved screaming, flapping, and a lesson that would echo through the neighborhood for years. Here's exactly how it happened. Marcus Webb had purchased the corner lot property on Willow Creek Drive 4 years earlier, drawn by the massive backyard that backed up to a greenbelt. At 42, the nurse had worked double shifts for 3 years to afford the saltwater pool installation, custom deck, and landscape lighting that transformed the space into his personal sanctuary. After 16-hour shifts dealing with trauma cases and emotional devastation, that pool wasn't a luxury, it was survival. The therapy that kept him functional. His neighbors, the Harrison family on one side, respected the privacy fence. The Hutchins family on the other side had different ideas. Corinne Hutchins, a 38-year-old real estate agent who drove a white Mercedes SUV with vanity plates reading Sold IT, had moved in 2 years earlier with her investment banker husband, Derek, and their 3 children, Brittany, 14, Mason, 12, and Harper, 9. Within weeks, Corinne had complained about Marcus's fence height, his pool pump noise, and the unsightly vegetable garden visible from her second-floor window. Marcus had smiled politely and ignored her. The fence was code compliant. The pump ran during legal hours. His garden predated her arrival. Then March 2020 arrived, and the world stopped. The first incident happened on April 3rd, 3 weeks into lockdown. Marcus returned from a devastating night shift 6 COVID patients. 2 deaths. His hazmat suit soaked with sweat to find wet footprints across his deck in a deflated pool float drifting in the water. His gate was latched, but showed scratches near the lock. He'd assumed kids from the Greenbelt had jumped the back fence. He was exhausted. He let it go. The second incident, 2 weeks later, erased any doubt. Marcus had collapsed in the bed at 8 a.m. after another nightmare shift. At 2 p.m., splashing and shrieking laughter jolted him awake. He stumbled to his back window and stared in disbelief. Corinne Hutchins reclined on his lounge chair, white wine in hand, designer sunglasses perched on her head. Derek floated on Marcus's pool raft, beer in a koozie. Their 3 children played Marco Polo, screaming with delight. His privacy fence concealed them from the street, but Marcus had a clear view from his second floor. He grabbed his phone, photographed everything, and stormed downstairs. The confrontation lasted 90 seconds. Marcus, still wearing scrubs, exhausted beyond reason, asked him to leave immediately. Karen had looked him up and down with pure disdain. "You're never home," she'd said, as if that justified trespassing. "The kids are going crazy in lockdown. Don't be selfish." Derek had smirked, actually smirked, and said, "What are you going to do? Call the police?" "They're not responding to pool complaints, buddy." Marcus had stood there, shaking with fury and exhaustion as they packed up at their leisure. Brittany had accidentally knocked his solar lights into the pool before they left. The third incident broke him. May 12th, Marcus had worked 72 hours in 5 days. 2 colleagues were hospitalized with COVID. The hospital morgue had exceeded capacity. He'd held an iPad so a dying patient could say goodbye to family through a screen. When his motion sensor alert pinged at 1:30 p.m., showing the entire Hutchins family setting up a literal picnic on his deck, something inside Marcus went cold and clear. He called the police. The dispatcher sympathized, but explained officers were only responding to emergencies. He called his HOA president. Voicemail the office was closed indefinitely. He called his lawyer. A cease and desist letter would take 2 weeks minimum. Marcus sat in his kitchen, watching his security footage, and made a decision. If traditional authority couldn't help him, he'd find another way. And as he scrolled through his phone contacts and landed on his cousin Ray's number, Ray, who ran an animal rescue in the rural county, a smile spread across Marcus's exhausted face for the first time in weeks. He'd grown up on his grandfather's farm. He knew exactly what creatures made the most effective and terrifying security guards. And they required no training whatsoever. 3 days later, everything was ready. May 19th, 2 p.m., Marcus sat in his kitchen. Phone open to the security camera app, watching the Hutchins family approach his back fence. Karen carried beach bags. Derek held a cooler. The kids raced ahead with pool toys. They developed a routine Derek would boost Karen over first. She'd unlock the gate from inside, using a screwdriver on the latch. Then everyone would pile in. They had no idea Marcus had taken the day off. They had no idea what waited in the pool house. Derek hoisted Karen up. She swung her legs over, landed with practiced ease, and headed for the gate. That's when Marcus opened his back door and stepped onto the deck. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," he said calmly. Karen froze, hand on the gate latch. Through the fence slats, Derek's face appeared. "Marcus!" "Hey, buddy. We thought you were at work." "I know you did." Marcus crossed his arms, staying near the door. "I also know you've been doing this for 6 weeks. I have 47 separate videos of you trespassing on my property. Time-stamped, high definition. Every single invasion." Karen's face flushed. "Now look, we can explain. Karen Elizabeth Hutchins, 38, of 2847 Willow Creek Drive. Derek James Hutchins, 41, senior analyst at Morrison Financial. Brittany Ann, Mason Derek, and Harper Rose." Marcus's voice remained steady, clinical. "I know where you work, Karen. Morrison Financial handles your husband's employment. Derek and I happen to know 3 nurses whose retirement accounts are managed there. I know what school your children attend or attended before lockdown because my colleagues' kids go there too. I know you're on the HOA board, Karen, which makes this trespassing even more interesting legally." The color drained from Karen's face. Derek had gone silent. "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus continued. "You're going to listen to your options, and you're going to choose wisely. Option 1, I call my lawyer right now. File charges for repeated criminal trespass, property damage, and harassment. I provide my video evidence to the police and the HOA. I file a civil suit for damages, pool maintenance costs, replacement of damaged property, and emotional distress. Given that I'm an essential frontline worker who's been terrorized during a pandemic by his HOA board member neighbor, I'm confident the court and public opinion will be very interested." Karen started to speak. Marcus held up his hand. Option 2. You pay for every bit of damage. The solar lights Brittany destroyed are $340 to replace. The pool chemicals I've had to rebalance 6 times cost $180. The gate latch you've been prying costs $95. Privacy lock I'm installing today costs $230. Total $845. You write me a check right now. Your entire family is permanently banned from my property. You stay on your side of the fence forever, and I keep the videos as insurance. If you ever come near my property again, I file everything. Derek climbed halfway up the fence. You can't prove. I can prove everything. I'm an E-nurse, Derek. Documentation is literally my job. Every video is backed up to 3 separate cloud servers. I have 47 separate incidents. The timestamps match my work schedule perfectly. You only come when I'm at the hospital. Marcus pulled out his phone. So what's it going to be? Corinne's voice came out small. The check is just the beginning. Marcus smiled. Because I forgot to mention something. Option 2 includes one more component. You're going to apologize to my new security system, personally. Your what? Derek's confusion was genuine. Marcus walked to the pool house and opened the door. The sound started immediately. A honking, hissing cacophony that made Karen stumble backward. 4 full-grown geese waddled out onto the deck, their heads low, wings slightly spread in threat posture. The largest one, a massive Toulouse gander Marcus had named General Sherman, fixed his black eyes on Corinne and hissed like a demon possessed. Meet your new neighbors, Marcus said. This is Sherman, Grant, Patton, and MacArthur. They're African and Toulouse geese, rescue birds from my cousin's sanctuary. They're extremely territorial. They don't like strangers. And they absolutely hate people who run. He paused. Corinne, you're still on my property. I'd suggest leaving, now. Corinne bolted for the fence. Sherman charged. The sound that came from Corinne's mouth as she scrambled up and over that fence, designer sandals flying off, wine bag abandoned, would echo in Marcus's memory forever. Derek was already running down the street. The kids screamed from the sidewalk. Marcus stood on his deck, surrounded by 4 geese who had already returned to preening themselves peacefully, and laughed until tears ran down his face. The check arrived the next morning, slipped through Marcus's mail slot. Corinne's handwriting was shaky. The memo line read, property reimbursement. No apology note. No acknowledgement beyond the payment. Marcus deposited immediately and ordered the new security system motion-activated cameras with speaker systems that would let him warn off any future trespassers remotely. But he kept the geese. The neighborhood reaction was immediate and spectacular. The Harrisons, Marcus's respectful neighbors, came over that evening with a bottle of wine and tears of laughter. We've been watching the Hutchins family treat everyone like servants for 2 years, Jennifer Harrison said. Seeing Corinne run from those geese was the highlight of our quarantine. By the end of the week, 3 other neighbors had anonymously reported similar entitled behavior from the Hutchins family, complaints they'd been too intimidated to raise before. The geese became neighborhood celebrities. Marcus built them a proper shelter in the corner of his yard, installed a kiddie pool for bathing, and researched their care obsessively. They were surprisingly low maintenance. They ate grass and weeds, fertilized his garden naturally, and made excellent watchdogs. Every morning before his hospital shifts, he'd feed them and talk through his stress. They'd honk back, almost conversational. They became his therapy in ways the pool had never quite managed. The Hutchins family tried. Exactly one more invasion attempt. June 2nd. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Mason apparently convinced his mother that the geese were probably gone by now. Marcus was actually home, enjoying a rare day off, when his camera alert showed Mason trying to climb the fence. He simply opened the pool house door. Sherman was already at full charge before Mason's second foot touched the deck. The scream carried 3 houses down. Marcus watched from his kitchen window as Sherman chased the kid in circles twice before Mason managed to vault back over. The Hutchins family never came close again. The unexpected complication came from Derek's employer, someone Marcus never confirmed, who had sent the video footage to Morrison, Financial's HR department, with a detailed complaint about character concerns regarding Derek Hutchins, given that Derek's job involved client trust and fiduciary responsibility, and the videos clearly showed 6 weeks of deliberate property crimes. The company launched an internal review. Derek wasn't fired, but his annual bonus was restructured, and he was removed from several high-profile client accounts. Corinne's real estate business took a quieter hit. In a small neighborhood where reputation meant everything, word spread fast. Her listings dropped by 40% that summer. The formal apology came in August. Corinne appeared at Marcus's door alone, visibly humbled, and handed him a handwritten letter. "I was entitled and cruel," it read. "You were risking your life as a frontline worker, and I treated your property like my personal playground. I'm ashamed. I'm teaching my children that actions have consequences. I hope someday you can forgive us." Marcus read it twice, nodded, and said, "I appreciate this. But the Geese stay." Corinne actually smiled. "I wouldn't expect anything less." The kid showed real change. Brittany wrote Marcus a separate apology and volunteered at a food bank that summer. Mason started leaving cookies on Marcus's doorstep, monthly secret deliveries. Marcus pretended not to notice. Harper drew pictures of the geese that Marcus actually hung in his garage. 2 months later, in July 2020, Marcus sat on his deck at sunset, beer in hand, watching Sherman and his flock patrol the fence line with military precision. The pool water sparkled. His garden flourished with goose fertilizer. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. His space was finally truly. His dot Jennifer Harrison leaned over the fence. "Marcus, you're a legend. Every entitled person on this street thinks twice now." Marcus smiled. "I just wanted to swim in peace." "You did more than that," she said. "You showed everyone that being nice doesn't mean being a doormat. And sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom or a badge. Sometimes it comes with feathers and an attitude problem." Marcus raised his beard toward Sherman, who honked back approvingly. He'd learned that sometimes the best security systems weren't electronic. Sometimes they were loud, aggressive, and perfectly legal. And as Marcus dove into his pool for the first time in months without looking over his shoulder, he smiled. Because justice, served with a side of honking chaos, was the most satisfying kind of all dot across the country in Portland. Oregon, retired librarian Dorothy Chen, 67, was tending her award-winning rose garden when her new neighbor demanded she remove the eyesore because it blocked his view. Dorothy smiled the same smile she'd used for 40 years dealing with entitled people who thought library rules didn't apply to them, and pulled out the property survey showing her garden was 8 feet inside her boundary line. "Please," she said sweetly, "keep talking. My lawyer loves documenting harassment cases." His face went pale, but that's a story for another time.